Hello and welcome to another video. In this one we'll be covering the Donbass front and I'll be updating the front line based on some videos that are from the front line and I'll be analyzing some of them. Then we'll be looking at the news of the G7 oil price cap. So starting out in the Donbass front, we'll be looking at Marinka, which is this city here. According to the latest news, the gray zone has increased. Previously it was something like this, but now it has reached this road that cuts the city into two. We can see here from the video here exactly how the front line looks like. As we can see, there's a lot of buildings that are destroyed, all of the trees have lost their leaves, and generally it's an open field with a lot of signs that there has been a lot of fighting ongoing. We see that most of the cables and trees have fallen. There are some still standing, but it is heavily damaged, and there's barely any place to sit around in anymore. Moving on, we'll look at the Donetsk front around Pisky and Vodian, where the Russians had been pushed back but are now making a comeback, pushing the Ukrainians back here in the southern part of Vodian. We see this according to some other video here, where we see that there's similar situation, except this is much worse. As we can see, there's barely any building standings and most of them are destroyed, and there's a lot of exploded areas, blown up areas that shows that it's completely destroyed, but it's only here in the south. Further north in these areas it's not as destroyed as here in the south, which indicates that the area that they've only taken after completely destroying all positions, so that they're sure there's no one standing left here. As if they were, they would be exposed. And this also means that the new Russian positions here in the south of Vodian are in exposed positions, which means that they most likely are only holding it, but aren't actually able to defend this if Ukraine does a counterattack. And this is this part here in the south, as indicated by Zodiac's mapping, which is why I've mapped it as such. Moving on to the next part of the update is here in the north around Kuzimivka, where the village of Novoselivsky has been pushed, where the Russians have slightly pushed back the Ukrainians into these last couple of roads in the west of the village. We also see this as indicated by the video evidence here, where there are some Russian soldiers who are moving around clearing the area, making sure that there's no Ukrainian soldiers, and they are moving around, talk about the fighting, and this is all being geolocated to the village of Novoselivsky. Now moving on to the Bakhmut front, we see that the Ukrainians are now attempting a counterattack around Opitne, as well as Marinka, or whatever this village here in the south is called, the one by the intersection between Toretsk and Horelivka. The Russians recently captured this a few days ago, and now the Ukrainians are trying to recapture it. At the same time, they're trying to recapture Opitne and prevent the Russians from attacking Klishchivka from two directions. They're currently moving northwards from Kurdyumivka, which means if the Ukrainians manage to hold back the position in Opitne, the Russians will only be able to attack Klishchivka from one direction, which will make it easier for the Ukrainians to defend this position. That's it for the map update. Moving on to the price cap. So the EU reportedly close to a $60 price cap, which is 5% less than the prices that the Russians are selling it for, and this is the cheapest oil in the market. This price cap is spearheaded by the G7. However, how exactly will this work? The way this will work is that they'll incentivize the services of shipping and insurance to make sure that no companies ships any Russian oil, except that it is under the price cap which they have set, which means that if a country like China or any African country or any South American country, etc., wants to buy Russian oil and they buy it for higher than the price cap, then the shipping companies and insurance companies will not be able to insure and ship this oil according to the G7's embargoes, which means that they would not do it, as they wouldn't risk their business in the West. which means that third world countries will not be able to buy Russian oil except for complying with these sanctions and the price cap, which means that the Russians, as a response to this price cap, have announced that they would not sell to anyone who is dealing with this price cap, which could skyrocket and spiral the price of oil out of control. Some economists are predicting the price to reach 300 to 400% of what it currently is for crude oil, which would mean about $300 per barrel, where it is now about $100, and then there's the Russian one for $60, which means that the price of oil will rise significantly. As an example, right now in Denmark, it's about 1.8 euros. It would most likely rise to somewhere around 4 euros per liter of oil. And that is an insanely high price, and it will completely destroy the European economy, as inflation will reach record levels, and a lot of companies will have to either raise their prices beyond what the consumer is able to afford, or they will have to go at a loss after the COVID pandemic and the loans that they've taken from that and the rising interest levels. This means that the economic impact will be insane. So it is a very weird decision to cap these oil prices, as sure it is something that will hinder the Russian war effort. However, the United States is not willing to sell oil at a lower price to European countries or any other country for that matter, as they want to benefit from these sanctions rather than help their allies, which is why we are seeing the economic repercussions, which are going to be horrible for Europe especially, but also for the rest of the world, unless they comply with these oil cap prices, and Russia completely decides to comply with these oil price caps. That's it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day.